And welcome back. This is Mike Watson, filling in for John on the John Fredericks Radio Network. The Virginia Manufacturers Association is a member advocacy group that really tries to bring issues to the forefront that affect manufacturing in Virginia. You heard me talk about earlier how important manufacturing is for the community, not only producing goods here domestically, which obviously has gotten a lot of attention here lately, particularly when it comes to our pharmaceuticals, but the job opportunities provided to Virginians by bringing in the manufacturer that hires essentially every skill level, every education level, and helps create businesses all around it, to support it, whether it's raw material providers, if it's restaurants, hotels, service companies like mine. Everybody wins when we get a manufacturing facility moving to Virginia. With me this morning is Brett Vassey. He's the president and CEO of Virginia Manufacturers Association. I got to work with Brett some time ago through the Virginia Manufacturing Development Commission. Learned a lot about what the organization did, and after years of prodding, Brett, you said, Mike, you need to be part of this group, and so I proudly joined Virginia Manufacturers Association. So good morning, Brett. It's good to have you with me.
Good morning, Mike. Good to be with you, and thank you for being part of the team.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate what you do. Look, we, I don't know how much of the last segment you called, and you probably thought, well, man, he's being a little bit harsh on Virginia, but there's no doubt that, I do a lot of business, obviously having a facility in North Carolina, do a lot there, but I look at areas like Research Triangle Park down there. I know you've been down there, and you can't drive down one of their freshly paved or brand new highways without either seeing in your front window or your rearview mirror cranes, where they're constantly building businesses and so many manufacturers that are going in there. And granted, we enjoy when we get an announcement here in Virginia. We had one not long ago, looking forward to Petersburg getting a new facility going in as we talk about life sciences. But we've got a lot of work to do. Tell me first of all, so folks understand what the VMA does and what the role is in trying to enhance manufacturing here in Virginia.
Thanks, Mike. So the VMA, we have been the trade association for the manufacturing sector and the supply chain since 1922. What we focus on is government affairs, federal, state, and local level, including regulatory issues, legislative issues. We have the only state-based, multi-state workforce training organization, the Manufacturing Skills Institute, where we train almost 2,400 people a year in manufacturing skills and certifications. We have a professional development division. We hold over 50 events and webinars, topical trade shows throughout the year. And then we have a member benefits division, and all they do is work on programs, services, and resources to help manufacturers and their supply chain save money or make money. The most recent example is during the COVID crisis. One of the things that we knew is that we were donating large quantities of PPE, personal protective equipment, to the public health system because we manufacture it and we stockpile a lot of it. Well, we hit a wall where we realized we needed to be able to do something for our own members because their supplies were depleting. We weren't getting what we needed domestically or from abroad. So what we did is we worked with one of our member companies, the McClung Company in Waynesboro, and we set up our own PPE sourcing center to help our members find everything from thermometers to face masks. So we solve problems without necessarily having to go to government to do it, and that's something that's been in our DNA since 1922.
Well, you obviously are doing a lot for, it sounded to me like not only the manufacturers, but the community as a whole. We appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about legislation. Let's talk a little bit about the business climate here in Virginia. What, in your opinion, with all the folks you talk to, how does Virginia compare with, say, North Carolina or some of our main competitors? Where are we strong? Where are we weak? What do we need to change so that we can bring more of these companies to consider investing into Virginia?
We have always, I used to be an economic developer over 18 years ago, and we always were in the shadow of North Carolina trying to compete against North Carolina. But the reality is what we have done in manufacturing and try to communicate to the legislature is you're not competing against just North Carolina. and we haven't been for a long time. We're competing really against every southern state and every competitive nation abroad. Whether it's a low-cost producer, depending upon the product, or whether it's just a more tax-advantaged position if you're really technology-intensive and heavy industry. But you've got to have a way to empirically rank that. So what we did about 4 years ago, we developed what's called the Manufacturing Competitiveness Index. It's a measurement of 52 areas of measurement in 5 categories of competitiveness, like economic strength or workforce. Those are 2 big categories important to manufacturing. And we ranked all 50 states. So we had an empirical, data-driven analysis to say, yes, I know the state wants to chase the number 1 ranking with CNBC. Yes, we know that the rankings for the popular media publications, Forbes and others, are important. But what manufacturers make a decision on in locating their plants is very different than quality of life metrics for a lot of service corporations. In Virginia, sadly, we're losing position. We were 9th in the nation in 2018, and in 2019 we had slipped to 15th. And after this session this year, I'm not sure where we'll be because of just so much economic chaos around the country. We'll see. But we have some headwinds, and we're concerned. And some of the areas Virginia's got to focus on and has known this for a while, tax policy. Technology-intensive manufacturing, that has been the past, immediate past. It is the future. And we tax every single piece of equipment that comes into the state in perpetuity. Most people don't know that. Whether you make money or you lose money, you have to pay a tax to your local government on the privilege of using your own machine. That is insanity. And we have worked with local governments like Virginia Beach to eliminate their machinery and tools tax. We're working with local governments like Waynesboro, who wants to be the new manufacturing center for Western Virginia, and trying to prop that up. There are lots of easy wins that Virginia can put in place if we create good tax policy that's broad in its application and it has real measurable outcomes. That's what North Carolina's done well. We like to pick winners and losers in Virginia. We like to be able to offer a company an incentive to offset the differential between one state and Virginia in making that choice. That is not a winning proposition if you really want to raise all ships.
No, I agree with you on that, and that's some of the points that I hit in the last half hour. I know when we talk about corporate income tax, and a lot of say, well, companies don't pick one place or another just because of corporate income tax, but it is. I mean, when you got CEOs that are that their existence in their role essentially is to make the stock price better. And what makes the stock price better is a penny earnings beat when they do their quarterly reports. And if you can save the difference between Virginia at 6 and 2.5%, you can save that difference just in tax on corporate income tax alone. That's huge. And when you add that, just like you talked about with machine and tool tax and this bizarre system we've got, the machine and tool B-poll, same thing. Whether you're making money or not, you're paying these exorbitant taxes just for, as you said, for the privilege of using our own equipment, our own investments, just because we happen to be in Virginia. North Carolina, as you mentioned, it was 2015, and they had this major tax overhaul, and it was an incremental tax. I mean, I think they probably had 3 different increments that they lowered their corporate income tax by hitting. First they wanted to hit revenue milestones, and we triggered it, and they'd go down to the next. And I remember when Governor McAuliffe was making an announcement. I don't remember the exact year. But it was not far after this new tax law in North Carolina in place. But at the same day that the governor here in Virginia was talking about the fact that we weren't going to hit, we were going to have a deficit. We weren't going to hit our numbers. In North Carolina, they were lowering their tax because they had hit their revenue numbers. That shows you what comprehensive tax reform can do.
Yeah, the calculation for business, and I've been consulting on economic development deals for over 20 years, it's the effective tax rate. So what companies do is they add up all the state taxes, excise taxes, local taxes, extraterritorial taxes, taxes on electricity. They look at all of it, and they compare that state by state, and then they try to look at where there are offsets. And that calculation is a pretty straightforward, simple calculation. And what's happened in Virginia is we are competitive. I mean, being top 15 for manufacturing, that's nothing to sneeze at. But the reality is everybody else is catching up and passing us faster. That's the issue. We've got to be hungry. And I think the new VEDP management, they are hungry. They're trying to get that organization in a really aggressive posture. It's just that we've got to get the politics right, too, to be hungry and be out there trying to get the next economic development wave, but not by buying a company at a time, but by incentivizing existing business to invest in Virginia and be competitive and grow. That's where we're going to see the real change.
Absolutely. Well, what you mentioned, where we've kind of sat idle, being kind of liking being at the top, while the other states around us are improving. I call that the old IBM model. At one time they were the top in computers, in computer systems, and they sat on top as all these other companies. It was Gateway and Dell, and remember all those came in, and all of a sudden you look around and who's got an IBM computer sitting at their home? It sneaks up on you, and that's what's happened. But not only is it sitting on your laurels and letting others catch up, but what about legislation like we've seen introduced, some of it which passed, some of it we're probably going to face next year, that is going to make us even less competitive? I want you to address some of the things that you think the Virginia manufacturers are most concerned about that have passed. And I mean, a lot of this will go into effect, some of it tomorrow, some of it will go into effect in 2021. The governor's pushed some of it off because of the COVID crisis. And also, I don't know how much we can do about that today, but even some of the things that we know we're going to see in January of 2021 in the next legislative session, what can we get on board now to try to stop? So if you just kind of cover some of the things, the bills that got passed, laws that are going into effect that is impacting manufacturing, and also what do we got to worry about next?
Sure. Yeah, we've really isolated the primary concerns from a defensive posture in losing Virginia's competitiveness in the areas of environment, energy, and labor. We have never seen this level of activism. To give the readers an idea, that this session was a record number of bills introduced for any General Assembly on record. It was also a record number of bills affecting industry. And, we look at that from a posture of what is the long-term consequence, and are they passing those or just introducing them? And unfortunately, there are more bad bills being introduced and more bad bills being passed. Now, that happens with a new majority, and any time there's going to be more success because of the pent-up demand. But the business community's got to be more forceful in what are bedrock issues that will really substantially change Virginia's competitiveness. And so I'll give you a couple on energy. I mean, energy was all about the Green New Deal. You can dress it up in over 100 bills were introduced. They all had different names, like the Virginia Clean Economy Act or the Clean Energy and Community Flood Preparedness Act. All of them you can trace back to the basic foundations of the Green New Deal. Zero carbon energy generation, electric generation by 2045 and 2050 for both utilities. The new tax on all electricity called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. All of that funding, bypassing the General Assembly and being put into special funds at the local level for forgivable loans for all kinds of local activities. All of those raise prices and create less trust in government. That's not good for Virginia. Renewable energy is important. It'll be important and critical to the mix going forward, but you just can't dismiss the importance of affordable and reliable natural gas to everything from home heating to raw material and fuel for manufacturing. I mean, how do you think plastics are made? They're made with natural gas. Yep. Why do you need plastics? Well, guess what? Ventilators. You've got to have plastics to make ventilators if you're in a crisis. That's a simple example. And then it's even more complicated when you try to tie that to environment. Environmental issues have now wrapped around energy, and it's almost to the point where we're going to be like New England, like California, where energy and environment are intertwined, and really infrastructure grinds to a halt, and we're going to start seeing, according to the SEC, this is not our number, the State Corporation Commission, we could see 17 to 24% increase in just electricity prices from one bill this session. That can't happen. We've got to be more purposeful and have a win-win, or Virginia's going to lose out. Companies that are energy intensive will choose other states. They'll just go a few miles south to North Carolina, as you said, or other states or other countries. Yeah. Other concerns, labor. You know, we've never had to worry about a true attack on right to work. This year we had remarkable attack on right to work. The Democratic Socialist in the General Assembly was the patron of the bill. Never seen that before. And a large number of co-patrons and a full hearing and lots of support. So right to work, we defended it this session through the Coalition for a Strong Virginia Economy, of which the VMA is a participant and a founder, and we're proud of that coalition, largest coalition in the state of business organizations. But it's coming back. Right to work will be attacked every year, we know. Fair share, forcing non-union members to pay union dues. That bill was defeated, but by a very slim vote at the very end of session. That bill's likely to come back. Paid time off started with many weeks of paid time off by all employers for part-time and full-time employees. That bill is coming back. It was defeated. Unfortunately, $15 an hour wage passed. It was a delayed enactment, and then the governor delayed it 5 months, sort of unclear why it was only 5 months in the middle of this crisis, but May of next year it'll go into effect, and it'll be tiered increases. But there was no willingness in the new majority to allow for a designation and a differential for rural Virginia. You know, it's all a Northern Virginia point of view driven by big labor. And there's no calculation of total compensation, for instance, in the wage calculation. You know, a $15 an hour wage with no benefits in Northern Virginia is not a great wage if you compared that to a $10 or $11 hour wage with full benefits, retirement, and a hospitalization and medical clinic service for free, which we demonstrated happens in rural Virginia.
Well, that's one of the challenges that we saw throughout the years. Is so much is being derived from Northern Virginia, and it's like some of these folks have never even gone to some of the more rural parts of the state. When you look at prevailing wages, requirements on government contracts, you're essentially saying, you know what, small business in Southwest Virginia or in Hampton Roads even, don't even bother. We don't want to see you come up here and bid on contracts here. But the ones that are paying those wages that are in New York and Pennsylvania and other places, by golly, they'll get the taxpayer funded projects that we've got. So that's a challenge. The minimum wage too, you mentioned that. Yeah, it's incremental up to $15 an hour, but even after that, it has that opportunity based on CPI to continue growing, 2-3% a year, depending on what CPI is. So that's you're looking at potentially, if you take on average, say a 2.5% consumer price index each year, you're looking at a $17 an hour wage, and before the end of the decade, that's what's that, 130, 150%, somewhere in there above where we are today. That's not sustainable. Those jobs will not be there, especially those entry level jobs. So that's a challenge. Well, look, we've got just a couple of minutes left. Coming, obviously, what you mentioned with right to work, that's gonna come back again in 2021, and like there's been an attack or an attempt to attack it again and again for years, but nothing like what we're seeing now. What do you expect to see in 2021? Keeping in mind it's election year on that issue. Any other major issues that you want to cover? About a minute and a half left.
Sure, I think right now we are expecting to see major legislation around employer liability and employer regulation of COVID-19 health standards. Right now, the Health and Safety Board of Virginia is holding hearings without any public comment in their hearings online, trying to force a set of emergency standards on all employers. We believe that whatever that comes out of that board will end up as legislation. in the next session. So employers are going to have to be ready for that, and attacks on workers' comp to have presumption of injury from COVID-19. Big issue. On the positive side, all the things we already said that will come about will. On the positive side, we think that we're going to see some focus on advanced recycling technologies, which is exciting. We think that we perhaps will be able to get some attention around international trade and trade development. Our defense industry is booming and around the naval and commercial maritime manufacturing sector, and then reshoring. We're pretty close to being able to make a big announcement about a reshoring initiative, and we just want to get the legislature focused on some positive long-term things that will help us be more competitive and give them a reason not to vote for some of these things that have failed in New England and California, and all they've done is cost jobs and dollars. And this is something we want to give them something to vote for.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with the folks here. I appreciate what the VMA does. Last few seconds here. Obviously, my company is not a manufacturer. We support the manufacturing industry, so you don't have to be a manufacturer to join the VMA. Real quick, how do people find out about that?
All the information we have is on our website at www.vamanufacturers.com.
Great.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Brett Vassey, thank you very much. President, CEO of Virginia Manufacturers Association. This is Mike Watt back after the top of the hour.